I always tell people that you can do this. You can do UX work. You can do UX writing or any type of UX design as long as you're adaptable, curious, and just kind of don't let job descriptions scare you. If they say you need 5+ years of experience or something, just still apply and try to sell yourself in the right way or network within people within that company and then develop a relationship with them. Then they might be able to toss your name to a hiring manager later on if there's an opening. So that's kind of my advice I'd give. Definitely try to make an in at a company you're interested in based on a relationship that you develop with maybe another UX designer, UX writer, or someone out there, and then just cultivate yourself that way and show that you can do the work and sell yourself in the right way in the interview process.
Welcome to another episode of 24 Minutes of UX. If you're new to the program, this is a worldwide, community-driven podcast series about user experience, where we connect seekers of UX wisdom with givers of UX wisdom. We are your hosts, Jesse Anton
and Peter Horvat. We are doing something a little special this time around. We figured it was time to break the mold a bit and do a 2-part episode.
Exactly, Peter. Since we make the rules, we also get to break them now and then. And speaking of breaking things, we just couldn't break this discussion down into a single 24-minute segment. The flow was so good that we thought, why deprive our listeners?
Yeah, and I think many of our listeners will relate to today's topic, which is all about breaking into the field of UX. The truth is, most of us have come to the UX field by way of other career paths. Jesse, you were once a product manager, and I worked in marketing. Others have arrived via the paths of psychology, anthropology, market research, and even library sciences. The truth is that you don't need to be a graphic designer or a human-computer interface specialist to work in UX.
That's right, Peter. And yet so many people out there still confuse UX with UI. But that's another topic for another day. My question is, can you start your career working in bars and at ski stations and still become a UXer?
Well, let's try to shed some light on that in this podcast, shall we? Today's giver is Andrew Astleford. He's a UX writer and content strategist from Atlanta, Georgia, working at a software-as-a-service company. Before immersing himself in UX, Andrew worked as a journalist for media companies such as Cox and ESPN. So, Andrew knows his sports.
We also welcome our seeker of advice, Matthew Bradley. Originally from the UK, Matthew is a design thinking coach working on digital transformation initiatives for a global FMCG company based here in Switzerland. He has been trying to get a quote-unquote regular UX job and is starting to realize that he might actually be a few steps ahead of the rest of us.
And so, before we break anything else, let's jump right into the first part of the conversation between Andrew and Matthew.
Hi, I'm Andrew Astleford from Atlanta, Georgia, United States, and I'll be the giver.
So hi, I'm Matt Bradley. I'm based here in Switzerland, and basically I'm a digital transformation manager and business agility coach, and I'll be today's seeker. Good, so nice to meet you, Andrew. It's really thanks for taking the time, first of all, to come and speak to me. It's really nice to be able to meet a like-minded, let's say, individual, and even in these strange times, it's kind of nice to be able to connect with people across the globe, from literally from the comfort of my living room. So looking forward to today's conversation, basically.
Oh, definitely, Matt. This is really exciting for me, too. That's one of the silver linings, I think, of this past year is just how nice it's been to get to know people throughout the world through video conferencing and people I've met on LinkedIn and other online outlets. So this is just an extension of that for me, and it's such a pleasure to meet with you and speak with you today.
Yeah, the really funny thing, I actually am realizing this now, I've never met any of you physically, ever. So this is all via meeting each other via LinkedIn or connecting or various networking or liking posts. So it's I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's really going to be really good.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. I think it's just great that we can bring it up another level too, because I've met quote unquote so many people online through just likes or seeing their name on posts or something like that. So to bring it into an emotional realm and to speak with someone across the globe is really exciting for me.
So, Andrew, your background, as far as I understand, is in journalism, and then you have now transitioned over into the field of UX design, if I understand this correctly.
Yes, I had a winding path, and I'm learning a lot of people in my field, UX content, have that. It's really interesting. I went to school for magazine journalism, actually. I did that in college, studied for it. I thought I was going to do that career forever, and it just didn't work out that way because in my country, the United States, the journalism industry is pretty hard. I had 2 layoffs in 3 years, so I was looking for something a little more traditional or 9 to 5 working situation. And so, I was just applying for any writing related role after that second layoff. And I was kind of fortunate to stumble into UX writing and UX content. I had a friend who was a product manager at my current company who told me about the opening. He knew I was searching for a job, and he said, you should apply for this role. I think I actually had to Google what UX meant. I was that ground level on what UX meant. So it's kind of funny looking back to that now in 2018 and see how far I've come. So, but it's been a really rewarding career, and just seeing the field grow as I've grown with it in a way, because I've noticed in the past year or so there are more UX writing jobs opening up at organizations throughout the country and the world. So it's very exciting, and I'm having a lot of fun with it right now.
Yeah. So you're working in the US on particular projects or in product management. Like in what fields you work in with UX design?
Yes, so I work within our product development group at my company. We're a marketing analytics platform, but we're a pretty big organization, and comparatively, like 200 some employees. And so I'm within the UX umbrella, though, and so our UX content team is like a subset of that. So there are a few UX writers and our UX content director, and so that's my little team there. But we also work with UX designers, and so that's like the UX team as a whole. And then I also work with product managers, engineers, business intelligence professionals to solve problems within our app and the various parts of the app that I support. So it's a really interesting field because, as a journalist, I would do a lot of long form writing, literary writing, put together these different like storytelling pieces, but it's a lot different with UX writing. It's a lot more concise, conceptual. You want to be clear and helpful to the user and have each word count. I made this comparison before, but it's a lot like Twitter in a way, where it's like trying to keep things at a really small amount of words, but still be impactful. So it's a different exercise for my brain as I've gone along with this field, but I've learned to just really enjoy the left brain, right brain aspect of it, where you can still be creative in a way, but you're really problem solving as well and helping users accomplish their goals within the app. So that's a lot of fun. And I also build videos too for product education with my company. So that's been exciting to do that as well. So get a little creative kick that way. And it's fun to see myself grow along with the role over time.
Interesting. So do you have quite let's say, a broad scope of work that you work in, basically, which is really interesting. Coming from my background is basically, let's say, marketing, general business management, and then I fell into, let's say, working in business transformation, which then led me to work in the next phase, let's say, in digital transformation. Let's use that umbrella term to kind of summarize everything.
Yeah.
Which then, let's say, as my organization progressed and matured digitally, then it opened me up for other opportunities in terms of becoming a design thinking coach. I also participated and was a finalist in an entrepreneurship program where I won, let's say, some seed funding to create my own collaboration product. And that, for me, this is really where my interest, my curiosity, I really found my passion, with this work. And that was back in 2017, where this kind of journey really started for me. And ever since, I've always wanted more, and I've got really, really curious about it as well. So I was also laid off. And then this actually, I could fully empathize, in terms of how that feels. But at the same time, it can be quite liberating because it allowed me to start thinking, okay, what do I really enjoy doing? And, what aspects of work that I really enjoyed. And I kept coming back to that experience. I think I loved every single minute of it. I've never worked so hard or so many long hours in my life, but it didn't matter to me. So for me, this was a really strong indication in terms of what I enjoy doing. And then becoming a design thinking coach as well also exposed me to so many different aspects of the business, and also exposed me to, let's say, more experiences with UX design. But for me, since then, I've done some freelance work on this. So I've worked with the pharma industry, I've worked in the banking industry, I have worked on highly confidential merger and acquisition processes where we've actually leveraged the principles of design thinking to reinvent, let's say, the services that they were offering in terms of the merger and acquisition process. And now I'm currently working, let's say, in the field of science. So I now find myself working with cutting edge scientists and applying some of these principles in their day-to-day to see how we can leverage digital, how we can even create better products for them. One of my biggest learning, they're some of the biggest consumers of data, which sounds obvious when I say this now, but this was a kind of a big eye-opening moment for me. And quite frankly, they need easy to use products and solutions to be able to deal with it day to day. So this is where I kind of fell into the field of UX, and this all kind of comes into play. But for me, going through this process of finding my career and finding jobs, I kept wanting to apply for roles in UX, and I felt that there was this continuous kind of mysterious barrier for some reason. I was not able to break or get over, and I don't know if this is something specific to, let's say, Switzerland, where, let's say, maybe the UX maturity is, from my point of view, is maybe still quite low, and the knowledge here is starting to appear. You're starting to see these roles, but these tend to be more focused on, let's say, user interface design, and these are often people that often have a background in, say, graphic design, which is not my background completely. So some of those are always the questions that always came up in these interviews. It's like, oh, so where's your design portfolio? Well, I don't have one, but I have all this other skill set, which I've built across, let's say, innovation, design thinking, digital marketing, coaching. So I had a lot of transferable skills here. So it's really good to have just a conversation with you, because I think we have kind of similarities in terms of you transitioning into this, and I'd like to understand more from you. How you did it, what were your transferable skills, how did you apply it, and how did you really break into this?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's so interesting what you said there, because I associate with a lot of it, just trying to break down that barrier. And that's something I've noticed throughout the past year as I've mentored people who are trying to break into UX, and especially UX writing, is a lot of these people have maybe writing backgrounds as a journalist like I did, or they've been essayists or something. So I think that struggle of like just pushing through that brick wall that exists right now is really a difficult thing for people. And I think there's a space out there for people like myself to kind of share our story as the people who were career changers and then are starting to explore this field now. So that's what I try to do a lot of times, is evangelize like how I did it, what you can do to market yourself in the best possible way for job interviews or trying to get an interview and all. So I think as this area of UX grows, there's definitely an opening for that to be matured over time. So my process was a little interesting, I'd say, maybe non-traditional in some ways, but I didn't have a portfolio either. So like what you were saying, Matt, about not having a design portfolio to show, I didn't have that with the UX writing portfolio at all. I've been a journalist for 10 years. And so I knew like long form storytelling, article writing, things like that, even like tweets, things, a lot of different mediums of writing. So what I did though, is I still submitted those things and I networked. And I think, at least for my situation, the networking part was the most important to get the job interview I did, and then to gain the trust of the hiring manager, because the product manager I mentioned, who was my friend who worked at the company, he put in a good word for me, and then she trusted his voice in the hiring process. And from that point, when you interview, it's all about just showing you're a good person, selling yourself as a hard worker, stuff like that. But I always tell people that you can do this, you can do UX work, you can do UX writing or any type of UX design, as long as you're adaptable, curious, and just kind of a level person, really. You're just ambitious. So definitely, Matt, like you can do this work, and anyone out there who's curious about it, like I definitely and just suggest, like, don't let job descriptions scare you. If they say you need 5+ years of experience or something, just still apply and try to sell yourself in the right way, or network within people within that company, and then develop a relationship with them. Then they might be able to toss your name to a hiring manager later on if there's an opening. So that's kind of my advice I'd give. Definitely try to make an in at a company you're interested in based on a relationship that you develop with maybe another UX designer, UX writer, or someone out there, and then just cultivate yourself that way and show that you can do the work and sell yourself in the right way in the interview process.
Yeah, thanks for that. This is kind of a nice transition to kind of really take me on to my first question, and maybe this is a provocative question, but are there people doing the hiring? Are they fully aware what they're hiring for? And this is a kind of a question, as I've been through these hiring processes, thankfully I found another very super exciting one. But I'm finding that sometimes hiring managers, particularly here in Switzerland, they're jumping on a trend. Digital it's a very exciting field. Digital transformation has, let's say, multiple different definitions and different interpretations depending on where you sit in business. And I'm finding the same thing in UX design here as well. Because as I've done some digging, it's a very broad field. But let's say here we're still going through a phase where I think companies are looking for, let's say, the unicorn, or the do-it-all person. So you go for you follow the entire process from coming up with the initial concept all the way to, let's say, the interface design and then the delivery here as well, which is, unless you're superhuman, is often more than a one-man job, put it that way. But when I've gone through these interviews, I feel like maybe I'm almost finding myself educating these people about the UX process versus really trying to sell myself versus the role. So I don't know if you've ever encountered this to you, or if we're just, let's say, discovering this and playing catch up here in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it depends where in the world you are right now. I'd say here in the United States, I've noticed a maturation in that process where more companies are starting to understand the value of UX, the business value of it, not just the aesthetic value, but also that there are real business results that can be gained by having good UX and the good UX principles within your company. So I'd say, yeah, those are maturing quite a bit, but I'd say it's still an evolving process. You're right. I don't think everywhere is that way, and certain places are searching for that unicorn, like you said. I've seen job ads where they want UX designers to be the UX writers as well, and here in the United States anyway, that's a distinction that's changing quite a bit, where the UX writing and content design is becoming a separate discipline from the UX design role, so it's like two separate roles now where it's more specialized for content designers and then UX designers. So I think there's some maturation there, and people with UX content experience are becoming managers and they know to hire a certain kind of profile. So, but I'd say, yeah, it's definitely been a struggle for people to kind of sell the business value of UX in some cases, and I think that might always be an evolving process where we have to showcase our value and show why UX is important in a business and within a software development process. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear about different situations throughout the world. I think we're a little more advanced from the situation you're talking about in Switzerland right now, but there are still struggles here where we do have to sell what this role is and the value of it. And I think that's something we should always do, because we're always going to be evolving within our role, and the role is going to change over time and different specializations will arise. But within that, I think we're going to be okay as far as having people understand the value of UX within a business practice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think you touched on kind of two key points, or two key learnings I think I've kind of gained and matured over going through this process myself. Is one, we see, let's say, a rise of UX but used as a competitive advantage, put it that way. And one, I think some people are now starting to discuss that, let's say, the rise of the experience economy. Everyone, especially now since the pandemic, pretty much all forms of aspect have moved online. And now my customer experience is all through my screen, just like we're doing today,
Yeah.
So, how do we compete with that? And then for me, this is how you start using UX as a competitive advantage. And I don't think, especially here, I don't think businesses have quite woken up to the fact that, your purchasing experience starts by playing on my phone on your website. If it doesn't work, I'll be next, I'll go on to the next one, And we've become very fickle, let's say, consumers here. And this is really where I think people massively underestimate the power of this. Now, the second point I wanted to make, and this is from a mentor of mine, is, let's say we were going to speak a little bit more about the tech side of things and say IT departments and so on and so forth. Traditionally, these are run as support functions to a business. And, if you run in IT, you're, let's say, I'll stereotype massively here, but you're a bit antisocial, you're very geeky, and you're not particularly business focused, and there's nothing against my colleagues in engineering, but that's the kind of general perception of the business, And a good day in the office is when the phone is not ringing, because that means something is still working,
Sure.
But I think we're really coming to a point where some businesses now realize that technology is now integrated throughout their entire organizations, particularly large corporate environments, which is why I've primarily built my experience over the last 10, almost 11 years now. And then there's this new concept now that's floating around in terms of, let's say, running your IT department as a business. And this is where you see the rise of things like product management. And from my point of view, to become a good product manager, you have to have A, the business experience, B, a solid understanding of UX design, and C, now a good understanding of technology. And these are this is like this trifecta, which really makes you an effective product manager. And let's say, move, first of all, IT from a support function to a business enabler. And at the same time, you're also contributing to this experience economy. But I feel like, there are silos being broken down, which I find super interesting. But I find myself stuck in this transition phase where I can't really kind of showcase this knowledge, because I feel like I'm already not to sound arrogant, but I'm sort of 3 or 4 steps ahead of where this is happening and where this is going. So I don't know if you've ever felt like this way, or if you've had these same types of frustrations yourself, or have observed it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting what you're saying. As far as the frustration that you're feeling personally, I'd say just sell yourself as someone who's a few steps ahead. I think that's something that's valuable, and the best companies out there will realize that you're a trailblazer in that way and that you can bring value to the company with the experiences that you have. So as far as that goes, I'd say don't be shy about talking about those experiences and the different strengths that you can bring to the business and the different experiences you've had over time that have developed the skill sets that you have refined at this moment. So yeah, I think that's really fascinating. As far as what you said earlier about how UX really contributes to the impression of a product and kind of that make or break moment that someone has early on in experience, that's definitely true. We've seen it with my own company and different things I use on my phone and online. You know, I think more than ever now, we just don't have long attention spans. So you have to have a nice experience early. You have to show the user time to value quickly. And that's stuff that all UX can bring to the table and really strategize about what is going to make that happen for the user and to make them accomplish their goals of what they're trying to do with your product. So I think what you mentioned there, especially in the past year where everything has moved online throughout the world in a different way than it had before, I think that's so important to emphasize right now as part of the growing value of UX within businesses throughout the world. I think the smart ones will realize that and be like, we only have a finite amount of time to gain a user's trust. And if we break that trust early on, through maybe a technical difficulty or confusing instructions or some bad user flow, you know, that trust is gone and they might not come back. And that's a big business loss. So, you know, I think if we can emphasize the importance of UX in that way, that's a good thing. So, and then what you mentioned about product managers, I work within an agile environment at my company where the product managers, I work with them closely as a UX person. They're overseeing the UX process, the engineering process too. And they're kind of like the coach, quote unquote, of the, you know, of the design assignments. So it's really interesting. I think the best ones do have user goals and business goals in mind. I mean, we should have that in mind as UX people as well, but it's really reassuring when I work with a product manager who has defined expectations and just lays out instructions really clearly based on their perspective of user goals and business goals and marrying those two things together to create the best product possible. So yeah, I think as more companies realize that, you know, if they can bring all these various facets together, and maybe a person like yourself who has that experience who's, you know, a few steps ahead of what the situation is right now, and, you know, if you can bring that experience to create something that's memorable, that creates time to value really quickly for a user when they're first introduced to a product, and just refines that process of UX and engineering coming together to create something that's effective, that's a powerful thing. So I hope that matures over time throughout the world. And I'm starting to see it in my area in the United States quite a bit here right now. But if that can continue to grow over time, I think we'll just benefit globally from that maturation of the process.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really nice to meet someone who's like-minded and has these types of experiences. You know,
So exactly.
It's really interesting.
A big thank you to our guests, Andrew and Matthew, for joining us on the podcast today. Be sure to check out part 2 of this episode, where our guests discuss hiring practices in different countries, as well as the fluid barriers between traditionally siloed job functions, such as product management, business analysis, and UX design.
And thank you to our listeners for spreading the message of 24 Minutes of UX. If you are interested in being a seeker or giver on this show, reach out on 24minutesofux.com. This podcast would not exist without our guests, who are also practitioners just like you. So we are looking forward to hearing from you. Also, we would really appreciate you giving us a rating on your favorite podcast platform and spreading the word with your friends and colleagues. Tell someone about it. The more subscribers we have, the more regular and insightful content we can bring you.
Until next time,
Keep calm and UX on. This episode is brought to you by 24 Labs and is edited by Gwen Buell.